Hello, and welcome to the 21st video in a series on the tabletop role-playing game Bunkers and Badasses. In this video, I'll be presenting some rules for Homebrew. These are only suggestions, so use them in your games as you see fit. First, I'll start with some quality of life changes. You may have noticed that some guns at a lower level outperform the same gun at a higher level depending on accuracy. Nick Pereira has created a spreadsheet to show the damage values of the gun as presented in the sourcebook, as well as including tabs with suggestions for how to correct the discrepancy. These differences can be very small and almost imperceptible to players, but can be more significant depending on the gun type and level. I'll leave a link to the spreadsheet in the description. I allow players to respec their skills once per session, much like a player can use the new U stations in the video games. I allow players the choice to use their damage modifier instead of the mastery modifier when calculating health. I did this because I noticed a Necromancer with a sufficiently high mastery modifier was able to be a better tank than most other classes like the Gunzerker or Psycho. With this change, players investing in damage are encouraged to be in the fray, whether using ranged or melee builds. Players who prioritize other stats, like a Necromancer with a high mastery modifier, have to play more defensively. For prefix and red text generation, I give a value to each rarity using increments of 10% for each. So a common gun is unlikely to have both a prefix and red text, but a legendary gun is as likely to have both as it is to have one or neither. I felt this to be a good way to introduce these mechanics without it unbalancing the game. It also keeps players excited to find new gear. I created a gun break mechanic which makes the gun temporarily unusable. Natural ones on accuracy rolls contribute to the gun temporarily breaking and needing repair. Each rarity level increases the repair threshold by 5. So a common gun has to roll 5 natural ones before it breaks, but an epic gun breaks much less often due to it being a better quality. Weapons can be repaired by smelting a weapon of equal or greater quality. After smelting, the donated weapon cannot be wielded or smelted again. I chose these thresholds so it would create tension for players but not be overwhelming. I thought this was also a good way to use unwanted gear so it's not just sitting in the inventory forever. When using shops, I like the shopkeep to have one of each item per player per day using the generating tables from the sourcebook. This is good for players to keep looking for better gear in a new location, but will encourage them to go on adventures where finding loot will be much more common. For the remaining topics, I've dedicated a slide to each topic. On this slide, I'll be discussing the grinder, which is an in-game mechanic to reuse and repurpose unwanted gear. This is heavily inspired by the tool of the same name used in Borderlands the pre-sequel. As a GM, it may be wise to limit which rules are available to players. I've experimented with giving access to new rules upon reaching a certain level, completing certain missions, or obtaining certain items. I've redesigned the shields for the game. These designs are based on the effects found in the sourcebook and from Borderlands 2. I want manufacturers to have a unique identity with each shield by forcing them to focus on a particular mechanic. I'd often just take a concept found in the book and expand it to be across all levels or with a particular manufacturer. Next to each shield type, I've included which shield in the sourcebook inspired the concept. I use the forward slashes to denote the effect, capacity, and recharge at each level range. I made Alas focus on shield recharge, either quickly or constantly. I made Ashen focus on health regen. I made Black Powder focus on damage reduction, like the Rough Rider shield. I made Dahlia function like booster shields, but kept the damage mechanics found in the sourcebook. I made Furior shields lean into the reload mechanic. I made Hyperius resemble the Bee shield and the Black Hole shield. I made Malefactor focus on elemental mechanics, like the Flame of the Firehawk shield and the Neogenator shield. I made Pangoblin focus on high shield capacity or getting loot. These are like the fabled Tortoise shield and the Pot of Gold shield. I made Skulldugger focus on melee damage, like a Roid shield. I made Stoker focus on retaliation damage, like the Impaler shield. I made Torg focus on explosions like the deadly Bloom shield. I wanted all this to make shields less confusing for players. I didn't want them to feel like they have to be hopping around manufacturers depending on the level. They can just find a shield they like that suits their playstyle and just stick with it, allowing the gear to level up with them. Similar to shields, I decided to redesign grenades. These designs are based on the effects found in the sourcebook. I wanted each grenade type to focus on a particular mechanic. I took a concept found in the book and expanded it to be across all levels. I wanted all this to make grenades less confusing for players. I didn't want them to feel like they have to be hopping across manufacturers depending on level. They can just find a grenade that suits their playstyle and just stick with it, allowing the gear to level up with them. I also redesigned the relics table. The table presented in the sourcebook skews the generation chance towards some relics but not others. My generation table allows for all relic types to be equally represented. I also introduced a way to create epic and legendary relics not found in the book. I simply took the relics that exist in the book and made a linear progression for the epic and legendary versions. The forward slashes are used to denote each relic's effect and class effect by rarity. In addition to the updated relic generation mechanics, I made a separate set of mechanics which introduce my own relics not found in the sourcebook. I don't personally use the fortune relics since I don't want them to diminish the chances of getting lower quality gear which can be used at the grinder. I also made some homebrew, which allows for a chance for relic bonuses to affect the whole team. Additionally, I made rules for allowing relics to be used similarly to class mods in the video games. I do not use either of these rules personally, as I've deemed them to be too cumbersome or powerful. I've made some mechanics for a slot machine similar to the ones found in the video games. Here I've listed the rules and symbols. I chose to do 250 cost and 1 roll per player per day to discourage players from abusing this mechanic. Here I've listed some rolls and their payout. The order of the rolls does not matter. Each percentage of the cash payout corresponds to the gold amount and roll of the same position. So the second percentage, 90%, corresponds to the second amount, 22,500 gold, and the roll of 2 zeros and a 3. Here are the remaining rolls and their payout. I've also listed some useful chances based on the established rules. Finally, I made some homebrew for vehicle races. On this slide, I establish a summary of vehicle races and vehicle attributes. Here, I establish the roles of the sapper and the gunner in the vehicle race. They rely on accuracy and damage respectively. Here, we establish the roles of the driver and the engineer. They rely on speed and mastery respectively. I also made some additional rules in case there are more than 4 players. That wraps up the video series. I hope you learned something. I'll drop a link to my Google Sheet in the description. It details nearly every aspect of this video series. It even includes some hidden sheets which I used for damage calculations. I'd like to give a huge thanks to the help channel on the Bunkers and Badasses Discord. It is a tremendously useful resource. Let me know what you think of these homebrew in the comments below. Thanks for watching.